Don't fall into a lifestyle you can't afford. In this series, Storytime, we discuss stories and we get lessons learned from those stories. Welcome to the Red to Black podcast, hosted by Warner and Mario. Mario, I'm going to take this one away because I have a great story about what not to do in your 20s, and it starts in Hawaii. So I show up in Hawaii, and I'm in a flying squadron. I go on an IA bill to Kuwait. Won't get into that story. And then I come back, and I'm like, man, I got some time in Hawaii. I'm going to do Hawaii up. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to buy a Boston Whaler. And now I need a truck to pull that Boston Whaler. So the house, $635,000. That's about $4,200 a month. The boat, $42,000, brand new off the lot, no negotiating, just grabbed it and went with it. That was like $600 a month, plus maybe the marina fee of $50 and then all the other maintenance. And then I realized I couldn't tow the boat into the harbor with my 540 BMW. It had the power to do it with a V8 engine. I mean, 5.4 liter engine, or maybe even higher than that, but it was impressive. But it was so low to the ground. I'd bottom it out, have sparks coming off as I'm trying to get the boat in the water. So I buy this old inline 6-cylinder Jeep Cherokee. The thing just had enough muscle to get into the car because the boat was pretty heavy. I think it was a few thousand pounds. And when I would pull it, like go backwards on the boat ramp into K-Bay, the car would like start smoking. But then as the boat hit the water, it would get like a little relief. This is what I was dealing with. So I was dealing with a new house, living the life, partying, a boat, and a car. Now, why do I relate this story? Because it was probably the most like reckless financial thing I could do with my money. And I could feel the weight mostly when I left the island. So if I was on like a small deployment or I actually got moved off of the island, that's another story. I took a 25 grand pay cut. So half of my paycheck when I got moved off the island from Hawaii to 29 Palms was going to pay for that house. So multiple things. I made multiple poor financial decisions. And then when my money got cut because I got moved to another duty station, I could barely afford that house that I still had and that boat. I ended up selling the boat at a loss of like $8,000. It was just like overall, it was just like an explosion of like financial decisions that for the listeners, the reason I'm sharing this is do not buy a boat, do not buy a house, do not buy a car unless you can afford that. Mario, what are your thoughts?
Lifestyle creep. So you start making some money. So Warner and I started probably getting, to make decent money in our mid-20s. And Warner went one direction and I went the other direction. Warner and I are from opposite sides of the country. We'll just put it that way. I'm from a rural community in Washington State, and Warner grew up in downtown Washington, D.C. So enough said of that. Anyway, I was able to catch up to Warner in life because I lived low to the ground. I lived very low to the ground. I've lived in Hawaii. I did not buy a big house, a boat, and a new vehicle. Pretty much lived on the beach. I lived right on the beach. Enough said. People start making money, and what they do is they have to upgrade everything in their life. The reality is that's W-2 income. Warner and I in our 20s were making W-2 income. That's not sustainable income. That can be cut at any point. People are getting their legs cut out, so to speak, their legs cut out from under them right now in this economy. So if you're making W-2 income, that's not your business. That's someone else's business. They're paying you to be in that business. You're an employee. Don't do this lifestyle creep. Take that money and shove it into a business, put it into a good business. Now, once you own that business, now you start upgrading a few things in your life. Okay, now I'm going to take it a vacation. You know what? I am going to do that fishing charter boat. I'm going to go out. I'm going to get a 6-pack fishing charter, once a month or twice a year or something like that. I'm going to take some nice ski vacations. That was building businesses. That was taking money. When I started having cash come back to me from investments I made, so I lived real low to the ground with my W-2 income. I was pushing it into businesses. And then those businesses started paying me. I started getting checks from those businesses. I started making money off of the businesses that I owned. That's when I increased my lifestyle. I'm still not a big boy swinging with Warner, but I've increased my lifestyle every year based on my income from my businesses, not my W income. My W income is exactly, I live low to the ground based on my W income. The only thing I'm spending is money I'm getting that I've made passively. That's the money I'm aggressive with. That's the money I'll go blow on something. Nice dinner, nice vacation, new truck, whatever. It's money I've made in businesses, not W2 income. Back to you, Warner.
So here's what's real interesting about this story. When I was in Hawaii, I was a helicopter pilot. And before I got to Hawaii, I went through basic officer training in Virginia. And then I went down to learn how to fly in Quantico next to where the president's helicopters are, HMX-1, on this really cool little airstrip that you fly literally out over the Potomac. It's really cool. Then I go down to flight school, and I show up in flight school, and I'm partying a little bit too much, and I'm spending a little bit too much. And I had this epiphany. I've always wanted to invest in stocks, but I didn't know how to do it. I bought a few books, but I did say one thing to myself. I said, I'm going to save half of my income. So I saved, by the time I got to Hawaii and I did that deployment to Kuwait, I had $200,000 saved up. So I started off not as like this hot shot, just for the guys. You can start out in a really good position. I was going in a position where I'd probably come out of the military at $400,000, $500,000 if I kept on the trajectory. But what happened was there was this hiccup in the road where I just kind of lost my mind, and I just said, I'm going to buy a house, which I did recoup a lot of money later on when I sold, but it took me 10 years. That's another podcast. We'll talk about why you don't buy an appreciation. I have a real world story for that. But what had happened is that 200,000 started to dwindle away with the maintenance on the house. And when I got moved to 29 Palms and my pay went down, now I was pulling money out of that savings. So I'm learning, like, all the lessons that Mario's talking about, I actually learned those on the ground of what not to do. And the reason why I'm relaying it in this podcast today is for other individuals. You may start out saving money, but not knowing how to invest it. And then you take these poor decisions in terms of investing in a single family home that doesn't pay you to own it. It'd be better to do a 4-plex or a 16-plex. And you make these decisions because you don't know how to invest that money. So just because you save it doesn't mean you're going to do great things with it. And that's why I created this podcast. When Mario created this podcast, is to relay the stories that kind of almost sunk me, and then also give you the tools. So if you do save that money, now you're like, hey, I can invest in 20% operating margin businesses, build them, buy them, and buy business that pay me to own them. And then, as Mario said, then go buy those things. Don't make this money, save it, be unsure what you want to do with it, and then just go splurge and buy something and just smoke it all. That's the lesson learned of this story, is save it. As we talk about in this podcast, you make it and save it, invest it, and then get cash flows off that. Those 3 things: make and save, invest, get cash flows. You do that over and over again, then you can buy whatever you like. Those are my thoughts. Mario, anything else? Thank you for listening to this podcast. We invite you to get to know us by clicking on our LinkedIn profiles in the description of this video. Please subscribe, hit the bell notification for future updates, and share this content with your networks. Thank you for your valuable time and insights. We greatly appreciate it.